So today we're joined by someone I've had the pleasure of meeting very recently, and if you're a regular in the LinkedIn space, you will have definitely have seen this man. Responsible for the personal branding of CEOs and founders, our guest today is taking over the personal branding space with his no-nonsense approach whilst building his own agency. It's Phil Ossai. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing great, thanks, Jack. It's great
Beautiful.
to be here. Appreciate the
Thank you for
invite.
joining us. Big fan of your work. So, Phil, we'll start the way that we always start. So, who are you, and what problem do you solve?
Great question. So yes, I'm Phil, founder and CEO of a personal branding agency called Ossai. And essentially, the problem we solve is helping busy founders and CEOs build their presence, specifically on LinkedIn, but to help build their personal brand and reputation online.
Beautiful. So you see all over LinkedIn there are a couple of like freelance personal branders or freelance agencies. So if we get into kind of the nuts and bolts a little bit more, how do you do that for those founders and CEOs? Anyone listening, how would you go in and get them more revenue, which I guess is always the end result?
Definitely, definitely. I always say in the world of work, in the world of business, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. So at the end of the day, the aim is for us to essentially bring a return on investment in the way we work with our clients. So personal branding, depending on who you go to, you'll get a different definition, but it's essentially what people think of and associate you with when they see your name and face and content. So that can mean personal branding can be done in multiple different ways. Certain people prefer to focus on, copywriting, and the phrase ghostwriting has been thrown around with personal branding, whereas other people kind of have more of a sales-led approach. But then I also know there's a lot of PR and brand awareness that can kind of go under the umbrella of personal branding. The way we work, we tend to focus very heavily on anything that's a return on investment. So we believe that content produces conversations that builds a community. That's kind of our framework that we operate of, and the aim of that is to build a community of whoever our clients want to connect with and can't get people with, whether it's the decision makers or it's maybe people they want to influence. So we can have different objectives, but the main key is to build that community and of course have meaningful conversations with those people within that community, and that's what we class as success. So if you're to work with, I guess, Osai, as opposed to any other person in the personal branding space, we focus on the community side. I do know a few of amazing personal branders and influencers, I guess, agencies that kind of have a different approach, but again, it's very personal. Personal branding is very personal, so depending on who you go to, you'll get a different answer. That was my one.
Okay. So if I'm a business that's heavy on the sales, I've got a sales team, they're in the trenches,
Yeah.
We're having conversations, we're getting in front of people, and personal branding, I just don't get what that would offer me. I'm a CEO or a founder listening to this right now. Why am I wrong, and why is personal branding something I should be considering from a sales strategy perspective?
Great question. So personal branding, where it intersects with sales, is it has elements of marketing in personal branding, and that's something that is definitely important to mention, because again, branding is a long term play. It's more about associations and reputation. However, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe when it comes to sales, you can only really, I guess, like sell and activate on people that are aware of your product or aware of your world. So personal branding is kind of like a tool that you can use to kind of increase that awareness and slowly get people more familiar and comfortable and essentially educated into the changes you're trying to make as an organization. And as soon as they're in that capture, then of course the sale will be much easier. So sometimes your personal brand, you can view it as like a asset that can kind of do a lot of the work for you. So when you do want to go and reach out and potentially speak to prospects, you of course can have that upper hand, that advantage if they know you already.
So let's go a bit further with that then. So let's say that I am that CEO and that founder, and you've charmed me, you've persuaded me that this is something that I need to be looking at. In 6 months' time, a year's time, how do I know it's actually working?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Like we always say, between 3 to 6 months, you should be able to start to see a positive return on investment when you start to build your personal brand. Depending on the metrics, and I guess depending on your objective, that's how you can kind of decide whether it's working or not. But the main one is, of course, the leads. That can literally be reverse engineered into like an equation for you to be able to see the end result. So I guess when it comes to speaking to this figurative CEO, it's about understanding who are you trying to speak to, and what type of conversations are you trying to have with that person? What are their pain points? And of course, these are all things that are being, I guess, like the sales strategy. It's just about how do we, rather than use the channel of the company, how can we channel that through an individual and kind of create that personal connection? So there are frameworks and like equations literally that can be used to make that happen. But the key word within all this is meaningful conversations. So our metric when we work with our clients is how many meaningful conversations are we generating per week or per month, which would be with decision makers or influencers or whoever it is you try to connect with, essentially.
Okay. Interesting. That I love the personal thing, and then you mentioned there about like obviously the personal brand. Do you think that having a personal brand is stronger than having a business brand, or what are the pros and cons? Obviously, you want both, but I think like in terms of bringing in leads, like you'll have a marketing team that are working on the brand and pumping out content, which most of the time, if we're honest, is pretty shit. But when it comes to like the personal, do you see that by doing that for the CEOs and founders, they have a larger influx of leads rather than the dribble that might be posted on like a LinkedIn company page?
Definitely, 100%. So one thing we've kind of been doing like experiments and work around is seeing how do posts on the company page perform versus the personal page. And on average, like the statistics prove that you get 10 times more reach on the personal page versus the company page. However, there's a that's kind of very common now, but there's like a bit of a, I guess, a nuance to that the content has to actually be written in a very personable, authentic way. It can't just be a copy and paste from the company page onto the personal page. And I think that's where certain people get tripped up and think, I'm doing personal branding already because, I'm posting on my personal page. But if the content isn't unique to you, or if, in other words, the test we use is if you're to cover, the name and the picture profile of the person that's posted, can you tell roughly who's put that post out? And if you can't, then that means that very likely the content isn't very personable. It's not your tone of voice and from your perspective. So that's not really personal branding. That's just you leveraging the personal channel. So the difference here is that authenticity and really tapping into your personal story and weaving that into whatever topic that's trending or whatever strength of the business that exists. So it's that connection essentially.
Okay. And getting into that personal story, so there's a lot of people in this space and posting on LinkedIn, whether they're in personal branding or just wherever working in a different space. And what I found and what I see a lot of is a lot of posts like sympathy posts, or it feels a lot like vanity metrics where it's a bit of a competition. And we were talking the other day about you choosing not to post certain things because you feel like it actually wouldn't help with your brand. So what type of content should people be posting and not be posting, and what kind of posts can have that incredible virality results but not actually convert into any leads?
Yes, that's a very, very good point, Jack. Before I even answer that question, I just want to give a bit of context to how I learned about the sympathy post and I guess talking about stuff that can get you viral, but how it actually translates into business success or leads. So I put out a very simple post, I think it must have been a few months ago, where I literally gave everyone the context of who I am and asking for advice. So I literally said, I'm a 20-something-year-old, I'm running an agency, just started, here's my situation, what advice do you have for me? And in the light of people loving to sit on their high horse and, talk their talk and give advice, I had thousands and thousands and thousands of comments. That post reached 1 million people in its entirety. From the 1 million people, I had not got one single lead. Not one person from the 1 million that had seen that post had thought, do you know what, I want to work with Phil or I want to find out more about what he does. However, there was a post where I gave some advice on how you can overcome the posting anxiety of creating content on LinkedIn, which is a big, big challenge for a lot of CEOs and founders because they're concerned about how they will look, how they're perceived. And that post got me 5 leads. So sympathy posts and the concept of talking on your story, my advice is it depends on what the objective is that you're trying to achieve. Again, if we're being very ROI focused and we try to really bring in sales and business opportunities, as I guess to an extent non-PC as it is to say, sympathy posts do well for getting people to connect with you and maybe like resonate with you. But if you're a decision maker and this is like a large, high ticket service or product that you're selling, would you trust that in the hands of someone that, maybe dealing with some situations. And I know that's probably not the best thing to say nowadays, but it's the truth that I think sometimes there's power in vulnerability of keeping it within the context of what it is you're looking to achieve. But if you're talking about vulnerability in the sense of just you as an individual, personally, I don't think that tends to relate to business success because it doesn't increase the trust that you have with that person to deliver the product or service that they're offering. I think that might build personal trust and you might get along with them in the pub, but in terms of in the world of work, it probably doesn't. So the vulnerability needs to kind of associate to the end goal. And in this case, most likely it's sales. I wouldn't say talking about, too many vulnerable emotional things will work.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because one of the big things is like burnout. People will talk about burnout a lot, but it's like really understanding where the line is, because if you are a founder or a CEO and you're talking about burnout a lot, well, I don't know, like you're saying there, but I don't know. My brain probably doesn't work the same way as a lot of people that would be scrolling or whatever. And you could post a really vulnerable post about burnout, and like you said, get lots of virality, lots of people engaged with you. But would those people be willing to work with you and thinking, actually, is this somebody that's going to get to 3:00 in the afternoon? They've burnt out and they're not going to do work for me. So where's the line? What's good when it comes to being open and vulnerable, and what's like, don't do it?
Yeah. It's definitely good to kind of like, I guess, give this context and nuance, because if that was what we just said was sound clipped and put online, probably, probably get cancelled by somebody.
They'll
But
come for us.
100%, I think it's a case of vulnerability and I guess being a humanization of like the world of work and leaders is super important. But I think it's very interesting and important in the case of essentially when you're talking about maybe mistakes you've made and what changes you've made to kind of implement them. So if we were to use burnout, I don't think it's the answer. I can't give you an answer of this specific topics to avoid or to kind of talk on. However, if we were to use burnout as an example, talking about burnout isn't the worst thing, because again, you might think if you talk about just burnout and leave it there, you might think, oh, I don't think this person has the capacity to even work with me, so I won't reach out to them. However, if you've talked about burnout and how you've gotten over it and advice that you can give to other people to avoid that, that shows that you've made a mistake, which is, this is human, but then you've learned from that and you're creating sharings and value to provide to other people. That to me is someone I'd want to work with, because that person understands that mistakes happen, things happen in the world, but they know how to adapt and pivot. So it's in that second half of context of the learnings, the value you can provide to other people that actually kind of allows you to be vulnerable and connect, but still have that ability to build credibility and trust in a more professional context.
Okay. And what would you say to the people? Because obviously, if you do go viral, the way I think about LinkedIn sometimes is a bit like it's a billboard. Okay, so you post something and it's like it's all right, it delivers okay. You're on the billboard for an hour. If you put something up and it goes viral, well, actually, you might get a week worth of billboard time, which is obviously going to be more valuable because you're going to be seen, and then people might click onto your profile and they see what you do. What are your thoughts on that when it comes to actually like trying to generate sales or leads?
Yeah, great question. So this is probably a good opportunity for me to get into our framework of the 3 C's. So the 3 C's is essentially, we believe, content produces conversations that builds a community. I guess what you were describing there is very content heavy. It's that idea of, can I get awareness on this platform, this figurative billboard, to be able to get as many people's attention. However, the question I guess CEOs and founders need to ask themselves is, who has control over this billboard? Who kind of allows for it to be up for, let's say, a few hours to a week? That's not in the control of the founder or the CEO or anyone that's involved in the personal brand itself. And I think that's a very it exposes a weakness in your personal branding strategy or your sales strategy to try and assume that a platform will just allow for you to be shown. This is kind of I guess this is why people do put out a lot of vulnerable content and maybe in a way that actually doesn't provide much value, because that billboard will of course allow for it to be up for longer. So the solution that we have is, yes, create content, make sure you're putting it out there consistently so you get as much opportunity to be on the billboard. But based off of the billboard itself, you should try and lead up to having a conversation with the individuals that have seen the billboard. So one of the great things about LinkedIn as a platform, it does leave the breadcrumbs of people who have, interacted with you or engaged with you or are aware of you. And I guess in the sales capacity, this is the best opportunity for you to kind of, swoop in and try and understand better what challenges they're facing, understanding what situation they're in. And even if it's just a situation where they may not be a good fit for you, you can just provide more value by sending them a potential, piece of content that you think they'll resonate with, and just leave it as that. So there's different ways that you can see that, not just by relying on the feed, you can then follow up using the conversations, and over time that kind of leads to our third C, which is the community. The algorithm at the moment is definitely favoring I guess individuals that kind of connect and know each other. So if I was to kind of like, I guess if I was to reach out to you, Zach, on LinkedIn, and we have a bit of a conversation back and forth, this could be personal, this could be me asking you about work. So rather than just like a template to sales message, it's a real genuine conversation. You're now more likely to see my content on your feed, Zach. And if you're to engage with that and just pop a like and carry on your day, your followers are more likely to see my content as well. So can you see how there's that reverberation effect by just simply just having genuine social conversations on a social platform, and how that can actually benefit? I think a lot of sales professionals kind of have thought about LinkedIn in its traditional way of, let me connect with people, try and just pitch my idea or my products and service to them and just see what happens. That throw spaghetti on the wall and hope it sticks method doesn't really work anymore. The real principle of personal branding, the real principle of LinkedIn now is just be social on those platforms, and the platform will essentially reward you for it.
Makes sense, really, doesn't it? Because if they're a business based on interaction and people using it, it's rewarding you for literally using the platform, not just for posting at 9 a.m. and then never looking at it till the next 9 a.m. slot next day when you post. It makes sense. It's like, from their standpoint, how do I get people to just use it all the time? If that's the algorithm, it makes perfect sense.
100%.
Okay, well, I think that leads in quite nicely to a question that actually, I see it coming up all the time, but let's imagine you've got a business, you've got a founder, charismatic founder, they've already got like a personal brand. People know the business probably as the business and probably as the founder as well. But you've also got a sales team, you've got a marketing team, you've got people who are going to events. Within a business, does everyone need to have a personal brand, or do we just elevate the founder?
That's a really good question there, Zach, because I'm very, very interested in this, and I've been interested in it for quite a while. So I think it must have been quite a few months into when I first started the agency, where I did some research into this. So we were working with a founder that is very, very charismatic. And I like it. I like the fact you use that word, because he can get everyone's attention. He walks into a room and everyone pays attention to him. And his personal brand was working great. Like, people were connecting with him. He was getting business leads. He was getting speaking engagements. He was getting flown to the other side of the world to talk about his work. So that was working well. But we definitely were aware this is very likely going to be volatile at some point. He might have some, quieter, drier months or weeks, and he'll have some great, better ones. So we thought, what can we do to essentially see how we can stabilize this? And I think here's where the concept of personal branding for other professionals within the organization is very useful, because essentially there's this concept of like the compound effect, right? What happens if one person has a personal brand? But then what happens if the leadership team have personal brands as well, and then the junior staff, all talking about the same concepts and the same topics in their own different, unique, contextual way? I think that compounds to something bigger than people really realize. And I think there must be some stat that backs this up. But as humans, we can't really understand exponential growth. We can understand 1 + 1 + 1, but we don't really understand the multiplier effect. So I don't think it's hard to really comprehend how big of a impact you can have if you encourage your team to build their personal brands. I guess you're thinking, okay, cool, that makes sense, Phil, but like, how do we actually make that happen? Is there a business case to have every single person in your organization outsourced to a personal branding agency or something along the lines? Definitely not. I wouldn't recommend that. And anyone that's thinking that, please save your money. There is definitely an education piece Trust me, I'd like the money, but not in that way. There's an education piece in trying to understand what personal branding is and the benefits for it across the organization, and being able to find a essentially, whether it's external help or having someone internally that understands this and being able to champion that. That's probably the solution to this is organizations need to treat personal branding as, I guess, one of those competitive assets and advantages that they can have. If anything, it can also be I guess like a incentive for people to want to enter the company, because if you know that the company pushes and encourages you to build your personal brand, of course we do know building your personal brand does have benefits for the individual as much as the company. So if that person is to, be let off, or there's a situation where they can't work, and they decide to go somewhere else, at least they have some form of currency that they can use through that personal brand, and take it other places. So you'll end up attracting better talent, you'll attract better clients, and then you as yourself, as the founder and the CEO, your stock price, hypothetical stock price increases, because it's the people that are the most visible that get the attention first, and then it's those opportunities tend to trickle down to people that have less visibility. So if you want the cream of the crop, you want the best opportunities, you have to kind of make noise about it. And I know this wasn't even a question, but it's something that I know a lot of founders do struggle with, and they come to me as they ask, am I not full of myself if I'm just constantly shouting about myself online? And I think that makes a lot of sense if you think of that statement in isolation. However, you are a CEO or a founder of a company that is helping positively change the lives of businesses and people. That's amazing. I think you should shout about that, because what you're doing is you're not shouting about yourself, but you're shouting about the positive impact. It's funny because the phrase personal branding, it has the word personal in it, so you think it's about you, but it's not really. It's about what value you can provide to other people. So really, it's about other people, and it's about placing that value at the forefront of everything you do. So kind of to add a context to what we were talking about before with the vulnerable post, yes, people are getting vulnerable, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not placing the value of that, that story and your experience, if you're not placing value of how that can help other people, that's where people trip up. So when you place value at the center of everything you do, you combine that with having other people do that in your organization, the compound of all of that activity will just be a positive push for the whole organization.
That makes sense. I think one thing that me and Jack are big on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We post every day.
Yeah, I see it. It's great content.
One thing, good, appreciate it. One thing that we've found is there's this like weird humor line of things that we think are obviously a joke. Some people don't take it as a joke. So an example is Jack posted once that he'd booked 400 meetings for someone in an hour. Now, we know that is just completely impossible. No one could ever do that. Whoa, but I had a guy reach it. Sorry, Jack, to call you out there. But then I had a guy ring me up and say, Isaac, I've been following you for a little while. I just saw Jack had posted 400 meetings that he'd booked in an hour. I'd be pretty keen on getting you in to maybe help me with that. Didn't realise it was a joke at all. And we've got other examples where that's happened. So in your experience, where is the humour line, and what is the role of humour in that personal branding piece?
That's a funny example. I'll be honest, humour is a slippery slope on LinkedIn, because humour is one of those, I guess, one of those ways that you can provide value to people that isn't, it's not objective. It's definitely a subjective area. It's a grey field. What you find funny, I might not find funny, and vice versa. I tend to ground, my clients in what is truthful, what's authentic. So don't make too many jokes unless it's clear, very clear it's a joke. Whether it's, if it's hyperbole or it's a metaphor that you're using, there has to be an asterisk and like some context at the bottom, because we live in the world of social media. People are swiping through posts at lightning speed. They may not actually catch that it was a joke, which is probably why you got that message, Zach. But that's how I'd kind of say is just make sure that you're sticking to authentic stories. Comedy can work well when it's about, I guess, the company culture or about yourself. But when it comes about making jokes around the I guess the impact of your work, that's where people may even question the credibility behind you. Because tell me if I'm wrong, Jack and Zach, but like, I don't really see many, top CEOs and execs, making jokes about how much money they're making or how much percentage increase they're bringing to their clients. I think that's where I wouldn't have jokes, but if it's about yourself as a person, then I think that's definitely a good strategy.
Yeah, I think it falls into this kind of disruptive marketing thing, and I think that when I said I was going to start posting, I knew that Zach had been posting for a while. It was like, if we're going to do this, we have to be. It's that whole thing of authentic, and it was like, well, we've got to be who we are, and we are a couple of oddballs that do kind of make those kind of jokes, and there's a lot of sarcasm, and I've realised that it kind of, especially across the pond to our USA friends, sometimes it doesn't translate, but what I found is for the people it does work, it works well and people like it, and there's more of that community. For the people it doesn't, we may have burnt some leads there in the past, but then I guess the question to ask is, would you want to work with those kind of people anyway? It's a fine line. I want to get on to a little bit the evolution of LinkedIn, where it's been and where it's going. I can sometimes, and I'm bad for it, but I sometimes find myself having a bit of an argument with someone on LinkedIn, especially if it's something like. But I think that's great, and it's like good for publicity. I had an argument with a bloke the other day who was a LinkedIn creator, and he was really pushing that LinkedIn needs to start prioritizing creators and paying them. And I was like, right, okay. My opinion is it is a social media platform, and I know that TikTok pays and Instagram and all these other ones pay probably the same amount that Spotify pays, where you're earning a couple of pennies every post. But he was saying like LinkedIn creators should be paid because that's what's driving people to the platform. But my argument and reasoning was LinkedIn is a social media platform, but it's also a business tool. And if you you would come to this because obviously you're business savvy or you're using it for work related things. If you're using it correctly, you would be monetizing from it anyway. That's the way it is. So where's your stance on that? What do you think that obviously if you're posting incredible content and you're giving so much value, should you be rewarded for just that value from LinkedIn?
Good question. I'll be truly transparent. I'm still on the fence with this. I think there are benefits to, creators being paid on the platform, because I do agree with you, Jack. Like, LinkedIn is a social platform. There is the context that is a professional social platform, but regardless, if we look at the trends and the direction that social platforms and the creator economy as a whole, which LinkedIn, regardless of if it likes it or not, is within that economy, they are starting to pay the creators of the platform because of the fact that it's not LinkedIn. LinkedIn, the company, is not the reason we are on LinkedIn. It's the people that use it. It's that kind of that I think it's called like the user effect or the chain effect, where the more people that are on it, the more engaged and more exciting the product or service becomes. So there has to be some form of acknowledgement from LinkedIn that, hey, we understand that we are not the reason you guys are using this platform, so we want to kind of give back as a form of gratitude, because what's stopping everyone on LinkedIn from moving to another platform and doing the exact same thing? So LinkedIn, of course, are aware of this. So there has to be some form of support that LinkedIn provides. Whether it's monetary, I do understand that it can be a fine line, because everyone is here on a professional context, which means everyone kind of wants to have that financial benefit as well. Without it getting too deep in terms of meritocracy and how we should distribute all this type of this value, I do think kind of to your question of where LinkedIn's going and how this kind of relates to the monetization, LinkedIn is definitely becoming more of a value-led educational platform. So there are going to be more tools and features coming out from LinkedIn that will essentially help creators, and I guess any user that's posting content, because anyone that posts content is a creator. I don't think there's levels to that. So we're all creators. There will be tools that will allow for us to have more, access, brand awareness and getting that content pushed out there. There's tools to kind of help with newsletters. I think we're going to start seeing newsletters becoming a bigger thing now. LinkedIn's trying to increase the visibility of that. One, I guess, feature that exists on every single other social platform that doesn't exist on LinkedIn at the moment is like a form of explore or explore page or discoverability feature where we can connect and find content from people we don't know and just have that access to, I guess, the wider part of LinkedIn. LinkedIn's always kind of traditionally been closed off, but they're trying to open it. That's going to probably be the way that I see LinkedIn going. The monetization will be interesting because if they choose not to monetize and they kind of make it a zero monetization policy, they will see problems with, retention of users and actual content being posted because other platforms are doing it. I wonder how LinkedIn will end up making that play. I can't comment too much on that side, but I can definitely talk about how I know LinkedIn will be moving into 2023 and 2024, and that's definitely going to be value led. We talked about the emotional trauma dump on the platform at the moment. That's going to be started to be limited by the platform. It's not going to be what they want LinkedIn to be known as. They want people to log into the platform and learn something. I had this tip with a client that I was actually speaking to earlier around how can we make sure the content resonates with the right people. And I like to write content with clients in a way where it's so value led that you can literally copy and paste the post into your to-do list. I want people to feel like they're getting so much value and insight that this is probably something they should talk about in the meeting, or this is something that I could literally, create some action off the back of it. That's what LinkedIn's for. LinkedIn's for learning. Is for connecting with like-minded individuals. And if two people are able to, I guess, exchange services and help each other and provide exchange that value, then that can happen. There will be some form of monetization. I wonder how that'll be, but at the end of the day, as long as everyone's focused on providing value to the other person and we're not thinking of LinkedIn and social media as a zero-sum game, then I think it's all going to kind of work itself out in the long run.
So if I'm a new business owner, it's just me, or I'm a consultant, I'm a particular expert in my field, I'm going it alone for the first time, and I've got no sales strategy, no marketing strategy, but I know that my target customer is probably going to be on LinkedIn, and I want to get into personal branding. What tips would you have for someone who's at that point? They've not done it yet, they've just set up a new business, and they want to start getting out there. Where should they start?
I think this is probably my favourite question, so let's get into it. First thing I'd tell that person is to stop thinking of personal branding as something to get into. Your personal brand is your reputation. It exists whether or not you want to, intentionally curate it or not. What people think of you is always going to be there. So think of building your personal brand and intentionally entering the LinkedIn world as you just virtually entering, Wall Street or wherever your world of work is. It's like you're just entering a virtual version of that. So first of all, have that mentality that I'm here to provide value to other people, and I'm trying to find the right people to provide value to. So I'm not trying to provide, or I'm not even going to be possible. It's not going to be. I'm not going to be able to provide value to everybody. I'm going to try and find my kind of people, my tribe, and see how I can help them. So I first need to understand who am I trying to speak to, and understand them very well. So from job titles to demographic to, I guess, pain points and desires. What keeps this person up at night? This is sales 101, right? So you need to have that persona on lock. And once you have that, you should reverse engineer those pain points into solutions. And rather than tell the person the solution by DMing them and saying, hey, I've got XYZ solution for your problem, create content. And you create posts that are either personable, or it can be value led, it can be inspirational, motivational. There's different ways. I can get into that later on. But that content should give that person that you're trying to speak to the opportunity to want to engage back with you. You may talk about XYZ problem, and that might be something that person's really struggling with at the moment. They're very likely to either engage with the post. They may not even engage with the post and just go into your profile and have a look at your experience, the link in your bio. They may DM you and comment, but that's obviously a very, I guess, overt way of showing that they need help. But even those subtle breadcrumbs, like I mentioned, that's enough of a reason for you to then go out to that person and try and provide value in another way. Hey, John, I saw that you you've been viewing my profile, so I thought I'd introduce myself to you properly. This is what I do. I don't know if you're dealing with XYZ problem at the moment, but if you are, like, I'd love to have a conversation, see how I can help you. That type of consultative approach, that how can I solve this person's problem? I'm here to help that person. That approach, if you scale that through the content, so you're creating content at scale with that mindset, and then you're following up with people. That's the content and conversation sides that we talk about, because your metric then will be how many meaningful conversations with people am I having? That's literally all you'd have to do for the first, I'd say, 3 to 6 months of anyone that's just starting out on the platform. And over time, you'll see what content resonates, what pain points people are really experiencing, and then you do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And of course, over time, as you follow up with people and you reach out and you nurture those conversations, it's only a matter of time where you find that right match, and it's someone that really needs your help and you can actually help them, and you can make that connection. So 3 to 6 months of engaging on the platform by posting 3 to 5 times a week. I'd say spending around an hour a day on engagement with key people in your industry that create content already, but then also maybe a few target potential clients that you actually want to help, and just monitoring their accounts and providing value for them. And then following up with anyone that kind of engages with your account. So whether it's an engagement or a reaction, a comment, a profile view, or anyone that kind of has come into your radar, just engage with them, provide value, and do that consistently for 3 to 6 months. And I can guarantee you'll see some form of return on investment. It's only a matter of time.
That's great advice. It feels like the big takeaways there are having that kind of problem-centric conversation, because we always joke about it. No one's ever slammed their hand on the table and said, "God, I need a CRM." It doesn't ever work like that, does it? They usually think of like, I have this symptom and I recognise this kind of problem that exists first. So I think that's great advice, and I think what you said then is great, because it just shows that you, in your own world, you're probably never promising people too much, because you're saying no matter what, there would be some level of trial and error in that first part.
Definitely trial and error.
Amazing. Well, look, I think that's probably a good note to wrap up. I feel like we could probably talk all day on this and go down other avenues. But Phil, if people are listening to this and they think, actually, I don't know where to start, I need some advice, we're growing, I don't have the time anymore, and I know this is a channel that I need to put more into, where can they find you? How can they start that process?
If this is a situation where, you don't have the time, definitely say reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. My name's literally Phil Ossai on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to just give you some free advice and tips, see how you can potentially go away and do it yourself, get someone in your team to do it. If you'd like to work with us directly, that's of course an option. But if you do have the time, because I know there's a few people that think they don't have the time, but you kind of do, and you're valuing time more than money, I do have a free LinkedIn mini playbook. I know, Jack, you mentioned it before that you enjoyed it, so that's my that's the social proof there. But definitely give that a bit of a watch. It's around like a 20-minute video that kind of gives you the steps of essentially what I've talked about today and how you can get started. It's free. It's on my bio, and hopefully that can be help. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll hopefully be able to help you.
Beautiful. It's great sales there. It's like you probably do have the time to just do it yourself. No, I don't have the time. Take my money, Phil. Thank you so much, mate. Amazing to talk to you. And for anyone listening, please do go and check out Phil and his agency.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.